When a politician says revenue neutral carbon tax, that's BS.
We're conservative. We believe in free markets. How come we cannot have a free market under supply management?
We as conservatives, we are successful when we are not afraid. When we are not afraid to talk about conservative ideas.
So just some leading Conservative candidates making their case in Ottawa during the annual Manning Centre Conference. But the debate was much more than a pitch for votes. It was also a battle between competing visions of Canadian conservatism, one of which will drive the party to the next election. So will it be the Conservative Party going full Trump, so to speak, taking a hard line on immigration and embracing social conservatism? Or will it pursue so-called big tent politics? And what is the race telling us about where the party is heading? We're going to get into all of that. Let's go once again to the Sunday Scrum. So interesting to hear the leaders there. I want to begin here, John, with your takeaway from the leaders' debate.
No dials moved one way or another. We talked about this in the past, and I think the situation remains exactly where it was. You have a couple of polarizing, divisive candidates, Kelly Leitch and Mr. O'Leary, who are trying to sort of swamp the party with new members with very bold and, I believe, very regressive ideas, especially on Ms. Leitch's part. But it's a ranked ballot, and while we don't want to get into the weeds, basically people rank their choices 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and anyone who is picking Kelly Leitch or Kevin O'Leary isn't going to have, anyone who doesn't want Kelly Leitch or Kevin O'Leary isn't going to have them as a second or third choice. Bottom line is, I'm sorry, that the middle of the pack candidates, people like Mr. Bernier, Aaron O'Toole, Andrew Scheer, these are the candidates who are most likely to be most acceptable to the broad range of the party and who are most likely to win this contest.
Katie, what do you make of it all?
I think that's probably true what John says. It's interesting. I always end up feeling like an O'Leary apologist, but in this particular context, but he may have many characteristics similar to Donald Trump, but in terms of policy, he's actually pretty socially liberal, small L liberal. On the fiscal stuff, you'll get a little bit more classic conservatism, but I actually wonder how many conservative members and voters out there realize that if they do elect Kevin O'Leary as their leader, they're probably not getting someone who's going to come out down really hard against immigration or on socially conservative issues. So I actually wonder how much that sort of is pervading the membership, who of course the people that are going to decide this. In terms of how the ranked ballot will play out, I was at the conference over the weekend and I heard so many different scenarios sort of put forward as how this could go. What's clear is that no one expected that there would be this many candidates left in the race at this point. I think it was sort of generally believed that by now there would be maybe 4, possibly 5, but that would be it. The sheer number, it makes it incredibly hard to predict how those second, third, and fourth choices are going to hang out.
Mm-hmm. Susan, can we discern anything about the future of this party at this point in the race?
No. It's inconclusive. It's up in the air. Just to get back to O'Leary for a minute, I think the sleeper issue, or the thing I'll be very curious to see, is how many Conservatives can tolerate a candidate who treats Canada like a franchise of his American business, who in fact has been making very occasional and brief appearances here in Canada, treating this like treating the Conservative leadership race like a hobby or a weekend endeavor. He was taken to task for this by Andrew Scheer and by other candidates during the debate. And I personally, I think it's, I don't know, you must be filled with self-loathing if you would choose a candidate who doesn't even live in your country most of the time, who has such a kind of, casual relationship with Canada. Surely they can find a full-time Canadian to lead their party. That's what I think. I don't know how many Conservatives think that way. Mm-hmm. I'm wondering what Katie heard in the corridors on the weekend about that, the fact that O'Leary doesn't really live here.
Well, before we get to Katie on that, I want to jump in, though, because we do have that clip, Andrew Scheer taking on Kevin O'Leary. Take a listen to it to those at home who perhaps weren't watching the debate.
All due respect, you haven't committed to winning a seat. You've made statements like it's your way or the highway. You haven't committed to putting your full time into this. Being leader of the Conservative Party is not a part-time job.
Mr. O'Leary, you need to know the Constitution of Canada, provincial rights and federal rights. You cannot come on this stage and start saying, I am going to throw the provinces away.
I can talk to people in Carbonaire, and I can talk to people in Comox, BC. By the way, Kevin, their place is in Canada, just in case you don't know. I can use Massachusetts as well.
So there you have it. Other candidates essentially targeting in on Kevin O'Leary during the debate. Katie, I will pick up on Susan's point. I'm wondering what you heard in the hallways regarding O'Leary, regarding that exchange. Please share.
Yeah, there's absolutely sort of the comparison to former one-time Liberal leader Michael Ignatieff is hard to avoid, and I think a lot of Conservatives who I was sort of talking to and listening to in the hallways were very mindful of that. At the same time, there's also kind of a drive to elect someone who can win, and rightly or wrongly, there's now this sort of belief out there that Kevin O'Leary may be the only person who can appeal to the broader Canadians at large. So they're in kind of a difficult position, but I think it's fair to say that while O'Leary had a sort of a team of supporters there, at least during the time in the lead up to the debate, he himself was a fairly sporadic presence at the conference. I mean, I would have expected him to have spent all his time kind of making the rounds and doing the handshakes. He spent most of his time doing one-on-one interviews with media at a different location. He did have a hospitality suite, but as I understand it, he was there for maybe an hour tops and not even at the beginning. So it almost seemed as though he's not kind of getting in down and dirty with the party itself. And these are, of course, the people that are going to ultimately end up choosing the leader. So I don't think he's doing himself any favors on that.
Well, but I do wonder, though, because he might not be spending a lot of time with the rank and file of the party, for example, at this Manning Centre conference. But, John, a lot of people keep talking about Kevin O'Leary, whether or not you think he's qualified or not qualified, whether or not you think he's spending enough time in this country or not spending enough time in this country. All that talk of O'Leary does put him front of mind for many Canadians. Does that not help his campaign?
Of course it does. It also helps his campaign that all the other candidates are spending so much of their time attacking him. But the fact is, he is fundraising successfully. He has a robust organization. He is selling memberships. And he is certainly seen as a serious contender, maybe even a threat. But I have said this more than once in the past. Leadership campaigns are important because they define the values of the party. Yes, you want to choose a leader who can become Prime Minister of Canada. You want to choose a leader who can defeat Justin Trudeau. But you don't defeat Justin Trudeau if you're a Conservative simply by having the most name recognition or by having some kind of glitzy, pizzazzy kind of charismatic presence. You defeat him on values, you defeat him on policies, you defeat him on principles. You present the Conservative Party as a rational, natural governing alternative to the Liberal Party, which I believe it is and can be and should be. In a healthy democracy, you should have that. And I don't see how Kevin O'Leary gives any of that.
But let me jump in, though, because, you know, as one who covered the U.S. primaries very closely, it seems that's what we heard about Donald Trump. Susan?
Absolutely. Also, by the way, let me remind you for the thousandth time, the guy who said that Donald Trump did not have a chance of winning an election. And so, you know, I was wrong then. I could be wrong now. But I'll stick to my guns. I don't believe in the grand scheme of things. Kevin O'Leary, at this point, who speaks no French, he says he's learning, but there's as yet no sign of it, who is not campaigning in the country. The Conservative strategist Jenny Byrne tweeted that she was on the plane with him to Miami right after the conference, who I don't think can win a seat pretty much anywhere in Canada right now. What elements of this make him a natural contender to take on Justin Trudeau?
But Susan, again, as I said, you know, this is the type of language we heard around Donald Trump.
Yeah, I know, but Canada's not America, and the Conservative Party isn't the Republican Party. And yes, there have been, you know, there's influences from across the border, but I just don't. I just think that a candidate who shows so much contempt for the people who are supposed to be electing him. I don't see how anybody could support that. Furthermore, it's not just the fact that, you know, you can say things that there is a hunger to blow up the way things are. There's an impatience with the tedious, gray, bureaucratic ways of politics. I feel it myself. But that's one thing. To come in and claim, as he did Mr. O'Leary did during his speech, that you know, any province that brings in carbon tax is going to see a reduction in the transfer payments from the federal government. A, that's unconstitutional. B, that would be hugely unpopular. He seems to be oftentimes running against Kathleen Wynne, against the premiers. He's the most heavy-handed kind of, central government first person we've seen since Pierre Trudeau, and that hasn't been a theme in conservatism either. So I mean, it's just at so many levels. Can I just say one more thing? Early, like within a week of this campaign starting, I rashly projected that Andrew Scheer was going to win. I said everybody else should just go home for a variety of reasons. Andrew Scheer's been quite disappointing, I think, so far. He's been very tentative and nervous, which is surprising for a former Speaker of the House. His French is not as good as I assumed it would have been. But he's gradually starting to creep up again, I've noticed. And I'm wondering if he might end up being the compromise candidate that John was talking about.
So Susan Riley doubling down on her bet, apparently. Okay, but we should also point out, as we keep watching the Conservatives right now, of course, the leadership race is also ongoing for the federal NDP. In fact, it's going to go up a notch today because Northern Ontario MP Charlie Angus will officially launch his campaign this afternoon at a bar in downtown Toronto. Let's talk about the NDP here. Katie, you know, it seemed for months you couldn't get anyone to run for this party, but now you have with this Charlie Angus jumping in, he's now joining as the second candidate, and we're expecting 2 more to come in. Are things starting to heat up on the NDP front?
I think they're definitely starting to heat up a little. They have candidates now. It's hard to sort of, it would be hard to underplay how weird it was that it took this long for anyone to enter the race. Now that someone's there, Peter Julian, of course, being the first, I guess we are going to start to see more people entering. Their vote isn't until the fall, so they've got a little bit more time to kind of get the momentum going. But one thing that I wonder, and it's also true for the Conservative Party, because the leadership process is no longer delegated, it's no longer sort of focused around a convention or event, it really doesn't seem to give the parties the momentum, the actual rank and file that used to be the case. If you sort of look back at what used to happen in leadership races, there would be a lot of attention, there would be a lot of sort of discussion of who would go where and whose delegates would support whom. It used to be a way to kind of get your party, frankly, some media attention. Now it seems to be taking place so much sort of on the outskirts and in an Ernst & Young filing room where they count up the ballots at the end of the day and announce the winner that I'm not sure if the parties are really getting as much bang for their buck as they would have hoped.
Susan, I think the race has gone from stone cold to tepid. And I'm still not sensing very much enthusiasm. And as Katie just referred to, the way that they've organized the balloting it's the most boring way you could possibly run a leadership, I would think. You know, you have a first round of balloting, and then you wait a week while they add that one up, and then somebody drops off, and so on and so forth. And so I think the balloting starts in September, and the results won't be known potentially until the end of October. I mean, talk about a way to kill suspense. They're in bad trouble. They need a Kevin O'Leary. They need electricity. Who lives in Canada?
Let me jump in and disagree
go ahead, John. Go ahead.
Let me disagree with everything that's just been said. First of all, when was the last time a leadership convention helped to propel a federal leader into office? Maybe Pierre Trudeau back in '68. I can't think of one since. So this notion that leadership conventions give parties a big boost. It just doesn't happen. Secondly, we've been very Jack Layton
that gave them a boost.
To third place status. Secondly, we've been unfair to the NDP. The election isn't until October. You know, last summer the Conservatives were in much the same situation as the NDP is now, with very few declared candidates. Charlie Angus and Peter Julian would be solid candidates in terms of bringing the NDP back to its traditional role as the conscience of Parliament. The third party that has no aspirations to govern, but does have aspirations to influence the agenda. The name that everyone is waiting on, the decision that everyone is waiting on, is that of Jagmeet Singh, the Ontario NDP MPP. He's young, he's charismatic, he has an amazing pedigree, he's bilingual. And my understanding is that many of the people in the party, especially in the organization of the party who supported Jack Layton, who supported Tom Mulcair, are desperate for Mr. Singh to throw his hat into the ring, or his turban perhaps. Whatever it is, When he makes that decision, that is when we will be able to define the NDP race, and not
Well,
until
he
then.
better get his act into gear, because the first debate is in early March, right?
Yeah,
Well,
who
but
cares?
it also begs the question, though. You know, as you say, he's an Ontario member of provincial parliament. Is this too much to put on his young shoulders? Good-looking, attractive, or not?
Sure it is. And he may decide that he wants to stay and perhaps contest the NDP leadership after the next election if that opportunity arises. But as my friend Darrell Bricker said, in politics, either you've got it or you don't. Lots of people become prime minister who didn't have it, Stephen Harper being the most obvious example. But whatever that it is, from what I've seen, Jagmeet Singh has it in spades.
Well, you know, Katie, you say the party needs something to boost it. Would that be a big boost?
I think so, yeah. And actually, one advantage, if you recall back when Justin Trudeau was running for the Liberal leadership, which was, barely even a race, it was more like a year-long preemptive victory tour, it did get people out. It got organizers sort of excited. It meant they could actually fill a room and get people to come and sort of pay attention to their leader in waiting. I get the sense that it's very possible Jagmeet Singh might have a similar effect on the NDP race. If he were to enter, he would be seen as so far into the front runner, the others may as well, not show up at all. But it would also give him the chance to then sort of tour the country and fill those halls and get those little orange banners waving. And that actually is pretty healthy in terms of building morale within a party. I'm not even talking about how it's seen outside. I'm talking about keeping the party faithful, excited and optimistic and willing to sort of volunteer and work on the next election.